on behalf of her constituents in relation to the challenge faced by the most modern workforce. She has been a powerful and consistent advocate for the workforce and the changes that we needed to see. That's why I'm proud that the UK Government has been actively marketing the site to potential investors and stands ready, as she says, to invest up to £9 million to secure a successful future for the site and to support the local economy.
I'm just sorry we didn't get to John Lamont's question. He's 50 today and I believe his parents are watching it. We now come to Prime Minister's question.
Would help if I turn my mic on. I turned on the sound for the show. Well, not for me.
Mr. Speaker.
Oh. Anyway, I'm here.
Southport inquiry report is truly harrowing, and I cannot imagine the pain that it will cause the families of all those affected. We will make the changes needed to honour the victims, the injured and the families. And our thoughts remain with the loved ones of Elsie, Bibi and Alice, and all of those impacted. Mr. Speaker, today marks 37 years since the Hillsborough disaster, when 97 men, women and children went to a football match and never returned. My promise remains, working with families, we will deliver a Hillsborough law to end the injustice that they have suffered and ensure the state will always act for the people that it serves. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister was right to resist us being drawn into an ill-conceived war in the Middle East with apparently no clear plan for how it may end. And despite the welcome cost of living support he referenced in his statement on Monday, we are all rightly angry that our constituents will feel the impact of this war in their pockets and in their daily lives. Can he outline what steps he is taking both to support our armed forces and to plan for all future contingencies? We all hope for a swift resolution and progress at the summit later this week, but must be prepared for all potential scenarios.
Prime Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend, the Royal Engineers in her constituency, and all those serving our country at home and abroad. We're proud to be investing a record £9 billion to deliver quality homes that they deserve. We're turning around army recruitment after the party opposite missed targets for 14 years. But the foremost responsibility to our armed forces are the decisions we take on military actions. My principles are clear. That's a sharp contrast to the Leader of the Opposition, who wanted to jump into the war with both feet without thinking through the consequences.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Nice. There we go.
Mr. Speaker, that was a very interesting answer from the Prime Minister. Lord Robertson, who authored the government's Strategic Defence Review, has said the Prime Minister has a corrosive complacency when it comes to defence. Why did he say that?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying I respect Lord Robertson, and I thank him again. I thank him again for carrying out the strategic review. My responsibility is to keep the British people safe, and that is a duty I take seriously. That is why I don't agree with his comments. Last February, that was 7 months after taking office, I took the decision to increase defence spending from 2.3 to 2.6%, paid for by a difficult decision on overseas aid. Last June, at the NATO summit, I committed to raising core defence spending to 3.5%. Last November, Mr. Speaker, the budget committed record funding to defence. I reaffirm those commitments now. The Strategic Defence Review is a 10-year blueprint for national security. The Defence Investment Plan will put that into effect. It will be published as soon as possible. We need to get it right. We inherited plans that were uncosted and undeliverable, and we're not going to repeat those mistakes.
Mr. Speaker, he says he doesn't agree with Lord Robertson. Lord Robertson is a former Labour Defence Secretary, a former NATO Secretary General. He also said, and I quote, "We are underprepared, we are underinsured, we are under attack." He said...
Order. Sorry? Yeah. I don't think it looks good, shouting somebody down at the dispatch box.
Kemi Badenoch.
Mr. Speaker, Lord Robertson's criticisms were of the Prime Minister, and he said Britain's national security is in peril. Our armed forces are at the end of their tether, waiting for this government to fund the Strategic Defence Review. There are still 2 weeks of the parliamentary
army?
session left.
Who defunded the
why
Navy?
won't the Prime
Who
Minister
defended the
publish
Air?
Defence
Who
Investment
underfunded
Plan
the Air
before
Force for 14 years?
Prime Minister.
It's going to stand up and say it now. What's
I
this?
remind the House that we put in place the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. Mr. Speaker, let me spell that out. That means we're spending £270 billion over this Parliament. That's £5 billion more this year, with defence funding increasing every year. These are record amounts, Mr. Speaker. Decisions of a Labour Prime Minister, a Labour Chancellor and a Labour government. And what a contrast. When they came into office, defence spending was 2.5%. When they left, it was 2.3%. When they came into office, the army was 100,000. When they left office, 72,000. They cut frigates and destroyers by 25%. They cut mine hunters by 50%. She said at the weekend, our defence is the weakest for 400 years. That is what they left behind.
Mr. Speaker, he's talking about the biggest sustained increase. Talking about an increase is not the same as giving an increase. The military and the defence industry want to hear about what he's going to do, not him prosecuting past governments. He promised the Defence Investment Plan would be published. He promised that the Defence Investment Plan would be published last autumn. I asked him at PMQs 6 weeks ago when it would be published. He had no idea. It is now the middle of April. What's the hold-up?
Mr. Speaker, I've set out my position. The Defence Investment Plan is the first line-by-line review of defence budgets for 18 years. She talks about talking. If you're going to support and make your country safe, you have to get the right calls on the big issues. She called for us to jump into the war. They can pretend otherwise. I remember walking in, standing here for the first time, saying we would not get drawn into the war, we would not join the offensive, and they all shouted, shame. They remember it. I remember it. They're just embarrassed by it now. A week later, when she realised she'd made a massive error of judgment, she attempted the mother of all U-turns. That didn't work. So this weekend she said, when I said we should jump into the war, she said this weekend, Mr. Speaker, that what she meant, she was talking about verbal support.
Oh, Prime Minister, it's Prime Minister's questions. We've got to concentrate. Kemi Badenoch. Just answer the question.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister loves to misrepresent my position on Iran. He does. He loves to misrepresent it. Let's stop talking about what I didn't say. Let's start talking about what he isn't doing. Mr. Speaker, you will recall that on Monday, I offered to work with the Prime Minister to identify the welfare savings we need. What did he say? No thanks. Now that Lord Robertson has said...
Why is it welfare or warfare?
We cannot defend Britain
you can
with
have
an
both.
ever-expanding welfare
That's
budget.
a false dichotomy.
Will the Prime Minister think again and work with us to find savings to
defend
fund
British
defence?
people, you need to do both.
She was clear in what she was saying. She said we should give verbal support. I suppose that's standing on the side and saying, get in there, good luck, mate, you've got this. Mr. Speaker, that is her approach. We are reforming welfare and spending more on defence. They did neither. The welfare bill rose by £88 billion on their watch. It soared by £33 billion under the Shadow Chancellor's watch. We're fixing it. What did they do? They voted against it. They voted to keep the broken system. So taking advice from the party opposite on reforming welfare and defence spending is like asking Liz Truss how to keep your mortgage down.
This is so poor from the Prime Minister. This is Labour MPs are laughing. Labour MPs are laughing, Mr. Speaker. This is a moment of profound national seriousness. And what are they doing? They're promoting sex toys in Parliament. That's what they're doing. Mr. Speaker, yeah, it gives a whole new meaning to fiddling while Rome burns. Mr. Speaker, it is being...
Fucking
That's
hell.
what they're doing, Mr. Speaker. Let's get back to the issue of the Defence Investment Plan and defence spending. It is being reported that the Treasury is asking the MOD to make £3.5 billion worth of cuts this year. He won't fund our military because he wants to fund more welfare. That's why he has a welfare plan to 2031, but no defence investment plan at all. Now that the Chagos surrender deal is dead, will the Prime Minister put the billions saved from ditching Chagos into defence, or is that going into welfare as well?
Prime Minister.
False dichotomy.
Mr. Speaker, we are spending more on defence. Record amounts on defence. £270 billion in this Parliament, £5 billion extra. And she talks about the Chancellor. It's because of the decisions of this Chancellor we've got the biggest boost to defence spending since the Cold War. We've also got the biggest pay rise for our armed forces for over 20 years. We've also got the biggest investment in military housing for over half a century. What did they do at the budget? They voted against all of that.
Kemi Badenoch.
That sounds like he doesn't want to spend the Chagos money on defence. Well, Mr. Speaker, Labour MPs
The Chagos money,
will
like, it's
know
just...
Lord Robertson,
it's like put aside.
a former Defence Secretary,
in a cupboard
a former
somewhere.
NATO Secretary General. He is Labour through and through. They all need to think about why he stuck his head above the parapet. I went through the Strategic Defence Review with Lord Robertson last year. The Lib Dems and Reform refused to meet him. No other party is taking this seriously. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the Prime Minister a very specific question. In January 2024, Conservatives approved an upgrade of destroyers like HMS Dragon so they can better intercept ballistic missiles. In July 2024, the Prime Minister paused that plan. Will he immediately approve and fund that critical upgrade now?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Dragon was commissioned by a Labour government, as it happened. But she stands and says, please forget the fact that we hollowed out the armed forces. Please clear up
I don't
our
think this is
mess.
a very strong point
I
of
went to
hers
Gulf
because
last week and thanked our armed forces for protecting British lives.
the armed forces know that it was the
She said we
Tories
should
who
have
fucked
jumped
them
into the
over.
war without thinking about the consequences. Then said, oh no, we shouldn't be in the war the next week. Now she says, what I meant was we should give verbal support.
Order. The front bench, I expect them to be quiet here. I also expect it, but it's the same people. I suspect next week you won't be in for PMQs if it carries on. Prime Minister.
Cup of tea.
In addition to saying her position is we should just say to Americans, get in there, she insulted our armed forces, Mr. Speaker, saying that they were just hanging around. These were pilots who, within 2 hours of this conflict, were up, risking their lives, taking missiles out of the sky, and she insulted them, and she's never apologised for that. She said a few weeks ago that serious times call for serious people. She is not one of them.
Ian Byrne.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Prime Minister said, 37 years today, 97 innocent children, women and
that's
men
my MP in
went to a
Liverpool West
football
Derby.
match and were unlawfully killed at the hands of a corrupt state. I was at Hillsborough and I was one of the lucky ones who survived and walked away. As parliamentary lead to the Hillsborough law, I stand here with a huge sense of obligation to the 97, all the families, including my constituent Debbie Matthews, every survivor and every victim of a state cover-up, who were all part of this collective campaign. There are signs of progress after last night's government concessions, but we've heard this before. Prime Minister, this is your responsibility. It is within your power to take control of this process and make good on your promise to deliver this legislation. So will you commit today to ruling out any carve-out for security services and finally delivering a full Hillsborough law worthy of the name, or will they be failed by the state once again?
Prime Minister.
Well, I know, as my honourable friend has just said, that he himself was at Hillsborough. And can I thank him for his decades of campaigning for justice. I am personally committed to working with the families to get this bill right. It is integral that their views are heard. We're discussing this precise issue with the families, and we'll make sure that he is fully updated. I reaffirm my commitment to delivering the legislation, to ensuring the duty of candour applies to all public servants.
Trent David, Leader of the Liberal Democrat.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I echo the words of the Prime Minister about the Southport inquiry and also the 37th anniversary of the Hillsborough tragedy? Our thoughts are with all the families affected and the survivors, and I hope he will deliver on the Hillsborough law. Today, Mr. Speaker, also marks the 3rd anniversary of the start of the devastating civil war in Sudan. I hope he will recommit to real action in the face of the world's greatest humanitarian catastrophe. Mr. Speaker, in a phone call with Sky News last night, President Trump has threatened to rip up his trade deal with the UK as punishment for us not joining his idiotic war in Iran. Mr. Speaker, this must be the last straw. Surely the Prime Minister can't send our King to meet a man who treats our country like a mafia boss running a protection racket.
Minister.
Can I join him in his comments about Sudan? We often overlook the fact this is the greatest humanitarian crisis facing the world at the moment.
Humanitarian crisis
my
propped up by the
position
UAE
on
and
the
Saudi
Iran war
Arabia
has been clear from the start. We're not going to get dragged into this war. It is not our war. And a lot of pressure has been applied to me to take a different course. And that pressure included what happened last night. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm not going to yield. It is not in our national interest to join this war, and we will not do so. I know where I stand. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the King's visit, the purpose of the visit is to mark the 250th anniversary of relations and independence, obviously, of the US. The monarchy is an important reminder of the long-standing bonds and enduring relationship between our two countries, which are far greater than anyone who occupies any particular office at any particular time.
Mr. Speaker, President Trump is one of the most unpredictable people we have seen on the world stage, and I hope he does not embarrass our monarch. But moving on, Mr. Speaker, last year the Prime Minister claimed he'd done some special deal, so Brits will be able to sail through e-gates at EU airports. But that's not the experience of families returning from holiday this week. Long queues at borders and passport controls are the latest symbol of the Brexit disaster. But they're also a symbol of this government's failure to repair that damage. So will the Prime Minister apologise for misleading British travellers? And can he tell them when they will be able to sail through passport control?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've made it very clear that I think our national interest lies in close relationship with the EU on defence, security, energy and the economy. And I was very pleased that at last year's summit we did negotiate an agreement on e-gates, and we're pushing hard on that. We have another summit this year where I intend not just to make good on what we've already agreed, but to go closer to the EU in the relations that we have.
Joe White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was Prime Minister questions, a meeting with the Prime Minister for myself and Arsenal hero Michael Thomas. We are still waiting, and I cannot back down. Not just have working-class footballers and others lost hundreds of millions to financial mis-selling, but the V11 group is still being pursued by HMRC for tax on money that they have never had. The Post Office and other injustices have been actioned. Why not the V11?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank her for her dedicated campaigning on this really important issue? I have met Michael Thomas and heard his experiences, and I share her concern about young, predominantly working-class people being exploited. I do want to make progress as quickly as possible. I've asked the Chief Secretary to meet the V11 group on what further steps the government can take to support these affected, and I'll make sure that that's reported back to her so she's fully updated on what's going on.
Saoirse Eastwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, people voted for change. But what have they got? More of the same. Yep. But it hasn't been them that have let down their end of the bargain. My constituents are working themselves to the bone. And let's be absolutely clear, They are working and still having to claim benefits. There's not a single section of society, whether it's farmers, care workers, students, you name it, they have been let down. And I don't want that to be the case. We need to show that this House works for them, because actors will step into that space. People would love nothing more than our democracy to be toppled, because we cannot show our people a better way of life. We used to say to people, if you work hard, you get on in life. That hasn't been the case for years. Will this government now change economic and fiscal course and deliver for people in the worst cost of living crisis?
Wow.
Prime Minister.
Brilliant.
Mr. Speaker, wages are going up higher in the first year of this Labour government they did in the 10 years of the party opposite being in power. We've taken the decision at the budget to cut energy bills across the country. I was in Northern Ireland, as she knows, just a few weeks ago, making the announcement about heating oil, which is obviously of huge concern in Northern Ireland, hearing what people had to say, putting in place £53 million. The authorities in Northern Ireland will administer that, but we're looking more widely at what we can do.
Jodie Gosling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
It's not enough.
Under this government, George Eliot Hospital in my constituency is thriving, rapidly soaring up league tables, ending corridor care, and now welcome an expansion to our community diagnostic centre with a new breast cancer diagnosis unit. Yet the same staff delivering this life-saving care for Nuneaton are suffering horrific abuse, much of which appears to be racially motivated. The staff I've met believe that right-wing marchers who don't even live in my town doing Nazi salutes on our high street are fanning the flames of hatred towards their colleagues. Will the Prime Minister join me in condemning acts of violence against the dedicated staff at George Eliot, and join me in celebrating their achievements, possibly with a visit to our CDC to see their excellent work and show their deep gratitude for their service and resilience?
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. Violence against our NHS staff is despicable. And we're introducing a new offence to protect emergency workers from harassment. In terms of the congratulations, can I thank all our hard work of our NHS staff who've delivered 5 million extra appointments in our first year in government. Mr. Speaker, we're going further. This week we've announced 36 new and expanded community diagnostic centres across the country, including expanded services in Nuneaton. That's the difference a Labour government makes.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, there is severe hardship being experienced by businesses, consumers and families right across the United Kingdom. Not just normal cost of living costs, but fuel costs is exceptionally high and getting higher. There are protests being organised as we speak for next week. Prime Minister, we need action delivered as quickly as possible in order to ensure that these protests don't escalate out of control and people see that politics matters, governments listen and take action rather than just offer words.
Can I thank him for his question? I know that his constituents and all of those in Northern Ireland are concerned about the impact that the war in Iran is having on them. I was in Northern Ireland just a few weeks ago where I spoke directly to party leaders and we announced what we're doing in that regard on heating oil. Obviously, fuel duty is frozen until September. Energy bills have been reduced. And we've also made it clear that we wouldn't tolerate profiteering or unfair practices, which was a particular concern raised with me when I was over in Northern Ireland. The most important thing we can do is to de-escalate the conflict and get the Straits of Hormuz open, and that's why I'm co-hosting the summit on Friday in order to make progress on both those fronts.
Patrick Hurley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Prime Minister firstly for his words earlier in relation to the horrific attack in my constituency, and also for the work that the government is now doing as a result. The families affected do not want their lives to be defined by the attack, and we must not allow my great town to be defined by it either. That's why I'm asking for the Prime Minister's help to ensure that my town's best days lie ahead of it. My council is helping to bring empty town centre properties back into residential use. It's a much-needed corrective after years of decline and neglect from the previous government. But more needs to be done. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that our town centres need place-based funding, and will he back me in my bid for Southport to be included in the next round of Pride in Place support.
Prime Minister.
Can I just say, having sat with him and the families of those impacted in Southport, in his constituency a number of times, can I just thank him for everything that he did and is continuing to do in response to that awful attack. And can I agree with him wholeheartedly that Southport cannot be defined by what happened in that awful, tragic incident. And therefore he is right to have the pride that he does have in his community. I'm delighted we're investing in reopening the iconic Southport Pier. We're investing, Mr Speaker, £5.8 billion through our Pride in Place Fund to cut power and resources and put them into the hands of nearly 300 communities. And only a Labour government will deliver this kind of change.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Mr Speaker. Welfare spending is set to rise by another £70 billion by 2030. And the last time I asked the Prime Minister about this, he said he was mending the system. Well, since then, Mr Speaker, this disastrous Labour government have raised taxes on working people to give even more to those who don't. The people I speak to across Broxbourne think that this Labour government are taking them for mugs. So what does the Prime Minister say to working people across this United Kingdom who are being asked to pay more and are getting less?
I'll tell them they were let down very badly by the last government for 14 years, and we're clearing up the mess.
14 years.
Mr Speaker, in the last week alone, 2 Scottish pensioners have been hospitalised following a collision with an illegal e-bike, and a 10-year-old boy in Grimsby was injured by another. The new Product and Regulation and Metrology Act gives government the power to define these bikes as unsafe and ban them from sale. Will the Prime Minister reassure my Carlisle constituents that the government will use these new powers to rid our streets of the menace of illegal e-bikes?
Well, my honourable friend is a tenacious campaigner on this issue, and I thank her for that. We launched a major programme of reform of the UK's product safety regulation. This will help tackle unsafe products being sold online, including non-compliant e-bikes and the batteries that power them. Mr Speaker, we're also giving the police new powers to take unsafe e-bikes off the roads and destroy them without issuing a warning beforehand.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Yates Station is at the heart of the town's industrial area and can be a gateway to the eastern end of the Western Innovation Arc. Local rail users tell me they want to improve. Businesses stress its importance for attracting a workforce, and in the wake of local manufacturing job losses, its redevelopment could be a catalyst for wider regeneration. There are already proposals in the town's master plan, so will the Prime Minister back jobs growth by supporting the redevelopment of Yates Station?
Prime Minister. I can thank the honourable member. We're providing the West of England Combined Authority with over £750 million to invest in their priorities. That could include improving services and station facilities at Yate, and I know she'll make her voice heard in relation to that. I'm pleased construction is already underway at new stations at Charfield and North Filton. We've upgraded the Filton Bank line as well, enabling more frequent, reliable services in the region.
Dr. Peter Prinsley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can I first thank the nurses, the doctors, the radiographers and the receptionists who were not on strike when I tripped and broke my wrist last week. Now, after years of neglect, Labour is rebuilding our NHS, including the West Suffolk Hospital at Bury St Edmunds and the new dental school at the UEA. Now, does the Prime Minister share my genuine alarm, as a surgeon who's worked at the front line for more than 40 years, that the vague social insurance proposals of some of our opponents would be the end of our NHS and seriously threaten the health and well-being of millions of our fellow citizens?
Prime Minister.
Can I wish him a speedy recovery? He obviously speaks with great authority and experience on our NHS, and he's right to point out that waiting lists at the lowest for 3 years, A&E waiting times are the best for 4 years, and ambulance response times are faster for 5 years. That's because of the investment that we put in and they opposed. But I wonder how much my honourable friend would have been charged if he had arrived at a reform hospital under an insurance-based scheme. That would turn the clock back. The NHS is on the road to recovery. Don't risk it with reform.
Nicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Prime Minister join me in congratulating Dorset Wildlife Trust and the people of Dorset for their incredible efforts to secure Upton Heath for nature after part of this internationally designated site was put up for sale after decades-old planning consent was being used for mineral extraction? We've worked round the clock to raise hundreds of thousands secured just last night to buy the site. But the value was inflated by this permission from the 1950s, which should never have applied to a site of special scientific interest. Will the Prime Minister demonstrate his government's commitment to nature by committing to legislate to extinguish historic planning consents without compensation on sites that achieve international environmental designation?
Minister.
Can I thank the honourable member, and relevant ministers are happy to discuss with her the specific site that she mentions at greater depth, and reassure her we're committed to protecting our countryside. Our land use framework balances restoring nature with meeting demands of homes and energy. We've just announced £60 million. That's a record amount to support nature and threatened species.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm greatly welcome the government's announcement to open up a youth hub in Luton to help bring together jobs, skills and wellbeing support in one place. So does the Prime Minister agree with me that after years of neglect under the previous Conservative government, it's this Labour government that's investing in the future of our young people?
Can I start by congratulating Luton Town on winning at Wembley? Coached, of course, by Jack Wilshere, a great ex-Arsenal star. I'm delighted her constituency is benefiting from a new youth hub, one of the 80 additional hubs that we're launching across the country. That's stark contrast to what we inherited. Over 1,000 youth centres were closed under the Tories. Spending on youth services was slashed by 73%. Labour's bringing youth clubs back, and we're proud to do so, building a better future for our young people.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 25 years on Prince's Risborough High Street, retailer Cado have said they are closing, citing hikes in business rates and the increases on taxation on employing people amongst their reasons.
Employing plebs.
Yards up on Duke Street, Salon 24 Hair, for the first time in 21 years, cannot afford to take on a new apprentice. How many more businesses need to close, jobs be lost, and apprenticeship opportunities trashed need to happen before this Prime Minister understands that the practical outturn of his policies aren't working?
Well, I'm concerned to hear of those examples. We have put in place support for small businesses, and I'll make sure that's available to him to pass on to his constituents.
Yeah, there's things in place for taking apprentices.
Mr. Speaker, tomorrow night I will be hosting a public meeting about the chronically delayed Burntwood Health Centre. For over a decade, well over a decade, people in my town have been let down by the lack of this replacement facility. We thought there might be light at the end of the tunnel when we were promised it by the end of 2025, but the end of last year came and went. No health centre and not even a planning permission. Will the Prime Minister agree with me that the County Council, now led by Reform, have promised a new health centre to the people of Burntwood, and they must make sure that there are no more broken promises to my constituents?
Prime Minister. Well, he's a great champion for his constituents, and it's shocking that they've been waiting over a decade for this practice. I agree with him, but sadly, Reform's leadership in Staffordshire is an absolute mess. They've had three leaders in 3 months, one of them forced to step down for appalling racist comments, and they're simply not getting on with the job. He's obviously proud of that. All you can count on for Reform is chaos and division.
Final question, Davidson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year, my constituents suffered the closure
of
the urgent care centre at Mount Vernon Hospital. And this year they face the loss of the cancer centre as well, leaving my most vulnerable constituents with long and difficult journeys to access life-saving and life-sustaining treatment. So will he encourage his Health Secretary to join in the U-turns and guarantee the future of Mount Vernon Hospital?
I don't know the particular details of his hospital, but I will make sure that they're looked into. We have put record investment into the NHS, but now he's raised that, I will make sure we look specifically into the case that he's raised here in this House.
Let the front benches change over.
OK. Well, that was it. Prime Minister's questions. Again, Sighs and sighs and sighs. We had Kemi Badenoch pretty much asking the same question 6 times, as she often does. This time it was about defence. She used all 6 questions to just ask the same question, which, you know, is infuriating at the best of times. You know, it doesn't make her look good. It doesn't make her look like she knows what she's doing. Do you know what I mean? In fact, you could say it makes her look like a bit bloody incompetent, and that she's been doing this now for how long? How long? It's been, Jesus, since the election. They had an election, didn't they? It was the autumn of 2024, so over a year and a half she's had of practice of this, and she's still quite shit at it. And asking the same question again and again is something that we don't really need. Full size, yes, indeed. So getting into Badenoch's questions here. Before Keir Starmer came up, they were talking about balancing the welfare and the defence spending. Pointing out, there was a MP, James Murray, Chief Secretary to the Treasury, who actually pointed out it's not a zero-sum game. As I said, when Kemi Badenoch was speaking, she's trying to make out that there's this false dichotomy that we can either afford welfare or we can afford warfare. We can't afford both. And the reality is we can afford both. Because you know what? We afforded to set up the NHS in the wake of the Second World War, when half of London was in rubble, when half of Coventry and Liverpool was under rubble. We managed to bring people together to create the NHS, which is currently under threat at the moment because it's something that I would say Nigel Farage wants to get rid of, but he doesn't. I mean, he doesn't have an opinion in his head about anything. He doesn't care. He just wants to make money. But it's something his handlers want to get rid of. So started off with Keir Starmer talking about the Hillsborough law, saying he'll keep his promise. We have the first question was from Laura Evans, Edwards from Labour, saying that the PM was right not to take the UK into war against Iran, and asked what he was doing to support the armed forces. So that sort of set things up for Badenoch standing up, and then saying the first question, she accused Starmer of corrosive complacency, and that was a quote, not my words, Lynn. That was a quote by Lord Robinson, who has made this defence review, and Starmer just stood up and said, "I don't agree. I respect Lord Robinson, but I don't agree." And he says he's committed twice to raising defence spending, which he has, and that included cutting aid to other countries, which was the thing before. Do you remember before they said, "Oh, we can't possibly spend more money on the armed forces and still give money to countries that need them to stop the wars happening in the first place that we might eventually have to defend ourselves from?" Yeah. Now they've moved because obviously we're spending fuck all on other countries and the wars are raging around the world. And now they've pivoted to say, "Oh no, actually it's benefits," but we need to say this again and again, right? Because there's people at the back who pretend they can't hear, right? Maybe they can't. Maybe we just need to put it on a sign and hold up a big neon sign that says benefits includes pensions. Pensions are a benefit. They're not a saving account that you're taking money out of at the end of your working career. It doesn't work like that. You can pay into a private pension, and arguably that works like that, but not on a state level. It doesn't work like that. The people working now are paying for the pensioners who are pensioners now. We're not saving up for our future. In fact, I don't think many people in my generation are going to get a bloody pension, or we're not going to be allowed to retire till we're 75. So Badenoch asked why the defence investment plan cannot be published before the end of this session of Parliament. She mentions the fact that it was supposed to be brought out last August, I think she said, the defence investment plan. Obviously, that's got bogged down because there's a lot of details to it. Starmer didn't really respond to this. He just said that she was going to jump into the war in Iran, and then she's embarrassed now because she changed her mind. Starmer's also said that he's, that when they're talking about words of, again, I think this was quoting from Lord Robinson. Badenoch said that the army, the military, was underinsured and under threat. And to which Starmer said, well, we're investing 270 billion pounds this Parliament in the armed forces, and pointed out quite rightly that the Tories did decrease defence funding. So it's a bit rich of them to be like, oh, you should be put up with this. It's like, you had years of not doing that thing that you're now telling us to do. In fact, Starmer's figures were defence spending went down from 2.5% to 2.3%. By the end of the tenure. Actually, I've written in my notes 2.3%, but online it's saying 2.1%. And also Minesweepers and Destroyers cut, which I thought was quite funny, like the idea of losing 25% of your Minesweeper. If you take it from the front or the back, it's going to sink either way. So yeah, Badenoch talking about the increase. Talking about the increase is not the same as an increase. And when asked about this, the fact that they were supposed to publish this defence investment plan last August has still not been published. The fact that he responded and started going on about the war, that's when Lindsay Hoyle, the speaker, actually intervened and said, it's Prime Minister's questions, which was kind of fair enough. And then Badenoch says that he was misrepresenting her position in the war, which he wasn't. If you watch that first PMQs after America declared war, didn't declare war, started bombing Iran in the beginning of March. She stands up and you can watch it. You can watch it on the BBC. Just watch it back. And she says, why aren't we going into war? And all of her MPs behind her started shouting, shame, shame at the government. She said that she offered to what was it? She said that she wanted to help Starmer find ways to reform welfare to spend more on defence. I don't think that they want your help. I'm not being funny, but you're the opposition, not the government. That's the government. And taking a Tory's advice on cutting welfare, taking a privately educated millionaire, their advice on cutting welfare, fuck off. Just fuck off. And then Starmer comes back with spending 88 billion more. Blah, blah, blah. Then there was a dig about sex toys in Parliament, a joke about them discussing sex toys in Parliament, which was led to the funniest joke of the afternoon so far about fiddling while Rome burns. You see, it's a masturbation joke. And people in Parliament, the masturbation joke. I told a wank joke in Parliament. I've got a dad joke pop up. I haven't got a wank joke pop up. But she was talking about £3.5 billion cuts to the military. Now I think this is, I don't know. It's one of those things where you kind of got to squint to see where that is. But I assume that is based in real terms over a long period. Because obviously you can say, oh, we're giving £17 billion a year more to the NHS. Yeah, but if the cost of running the NHS has gone up more than 17 billion, it's actually a net loss, right? So that might be what she was referring to. And then Starmer said, again, this 270 billion pounds in this Parliament has been put on defence. So he came back with the same figure. And talked about it being the biggest boost to military spending since the Cold War, which it might well be, but again, it might not be enough considering how much prices are going to go up for fucking everything in the next few months because of what Trump is doing in Iran. And then they talked about the Strategic Defence Review. Apparently she went through it all last year with Lord Robinson and saying that, that she's seen it all and I don't know what the point was on that actually. But then Starmer just stood up and insulted her by saying that she insulted our service people, which she did. And then he said she's not a serious person. which is not. And then Ian Byrne, who's the MP for West Derby, Liverpool, where I live. Well, my parents live in Liverpool, where I grew up. Talking about the Hillsborough 97. It is the 37th anniversary of the Hillsborough disaster today, on the 15th of April, 1989. And Starmer was giving his usual thing of like, yes, there will be a Hillsborough law. Now, the Hillsborough law needs to come in. It puts a duty of candour on all public people working in public bodies. Someone in the chat there, was it blah blah CW, said, "Oh, ban football, that'll cure it." No, it wasn't the football that killed those people. It was the police, and then there was a massive state intervention of a conspiracy of silence to pass the blame onto the fans when it wasn't their fault. It was the fault of the people running the football match, and the police and the services that were supposed to be there to help people actually ended up killing them. And all the people who were responsible got away with it. Here we are 37 years later and still no justice. The least we can have is a law of candour. This is taking a while to get through because of defence and security considerations. They're having to have some carve-outs for people involved in the military and ongoing campaigns, etc., etc. But there has to be a sunset on that because, someone who's committed some horrific crime back in the 2000s in Iran or Iraq, surely people now talking about it need to have that duty of candour put on them in case there's an investigation, and they're going to say, you got to tell the truth, or you go to jail. So Ed Davey stood up. He talked about Southport. Obviously the report came in about Southport yesterday, about how on Monday, it came out, talking about how the little girls who were murdered in Southport were failed by their parents and by the emergency services. There was a thing, not the emergency services, but the social workers and police and the local authorities. A lot of the newspapers said, put the blame on the parents because they're much more individualistic, but then it blames the police as well when you actually read the paragraph. You actually read the words below the headline, and it's kind of like, so let me get this straight. What you're saying is that the parents are responsible, which I don't disagree with that. I think that they should be taken to task for it. I think they should go to court and if found guilty, be sentenced to quite a custodial sentence for not raising the alarm. But it does seem that even if they did raise the alarm, nothing would have been done. And maybe that pushed them to not raise the alarm. I don't know. So he talked about Southport, he talked about Hillsborough, and he also talked about it being the 3rd anniversary of the beginning of the Sudanese civil war, which has been raging now for 3 years. This is the government forces versus a militia that used to work for the government, doesn't anymore. And Saudi Arabia and UAE are balls deep in this. They are funding either side of this proxy war that's going on. I don't know, because UAE and Saudi Arabia are supposed to be buddies, right? But clearly not. And this has led to actual condemnation, which is quite unusual for GCC countries, Gulf countries, to slag each other off. But that has actually happened as a result of what's happening in the deadliest civil war on the planet. I think the deadliest war on the planet at the moment. Then Ed went on to talk about this phone call last night from Donald Trump to Sky News, where he said that he was going to rip up the trade deal that had been negotiated over Iran. And he said, look, the king shouldn't be fucking, dragged into this, And Starmer stood up and said, yeah, we're not getting dragged into Iran. We're not going to be part of that. And then he said the purpose of this visit was to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the independence of the US. And to be honest with you, is the King of England the best person to send for the 250th anniversary of the liberation of the American colonies from the King of England? I don't know, just saying. But he did point out that this is about the relationship between the UK and America and not necessarily about Trump. And then we had a question about e-gates at EU airports, Brexit disaster, a huge failure. And we were promised last year that we wouldn't get held up in these. Apparently, Labour had done a deal with the EU, so it wouldn't take 3 hours to get on a plane, which then subsequently missed because it took off an hour ago. So yeah, then there was a strange question. I know some people were asking about this in the chat. Joe White from Labour stood up and talked about the V11 group who've been exploited by this Knightsbridge Holdings or whatever the fuck they were called, some investment group that diddled them out of millions and millions of pounds. All right. Okay. Yeah, I do think that there should be some court case here. But some of these footballers involved are millionaires. Like, sort it out, lads. I'm sorry you got exploited, and I'm glad there's a group of you banding together to get your money back. But, like, the fuck's it got to do with Parliament? Why is the Labour politician asking about this? About 11 footballers who were given bad financial advice? I don't know. I mean, are they doing this on behalf of other people? It smacks a little bit of Nigel Farage when he couldn't get his Coots bank account, doesn't it? Then we had the lovely Saoirse Eastwood, who's part of the Alliance from Northern Ireland. Actually, no, Alliance is all over Ireland, so they have an Alliance in the Republic of Ireland as well. Talking about how the Labour needs, she was always in bloody tears when she was saying this. She's saying that we need to show that this House works for the people who voted for Labour. I mean, she's not Labour, but she's saying you've got to sort this out. Wages are going up and not enough to cover bills. And to which Starmer's just like, well, we did this and did that. It's just not enough. It's not enough. And, what you want is an ability for, when you ask a question like that, for the Prime Minister to be able to stand up and say, well, actually, we have improved measurably the lives of people in Northern Ireland and across the UK. We have, in these actual metrics that we can show right now. But they took so long, getting the fucking arse off the couch once they won the election. I mean, they went off for a summer recess. Remember that? We had the election in July of 2024, and then we had like a week of Parliament, and then they fucked off on holiday. No, cancel the holiday. Just work. Just get it. Hit the ground running. It does seem like they just turned up on the first day in a big empty white warehouse and went, right, what are we doing? And it's just like, seriously, you didn't prepare for this. You didn't have the last 5 years to prepare for office, so you could hit the ground running. Trump did. One of the things they like about Trump in America and why his popularity is still at 39%, which is always will be. It always will be around 40%. It always will go up and down a little tiny bit, but that's it. That's his popular. The people in America, 40% of them fucking love him, right? And one of the things they say is, I don't like him as a person. They do, but they say that they don't. I like the way he gets stuff done, even if it's terrible things. This is why people fall in love with serial killers in jail. It's because they get shit done. People find that attractive. Anyway, so then we had Jodie Gosling from Labour talking about the abuse of NHS staff. And apparently there's new legislation coming through to protect staff and also new police powers for people who abuse NHS staff. We also then had Gregory Campbell from the DUP who was talking about energy bills, which is kind of making the same point as Saoirse, but not on the same side by any stretch of the imagination. Then we've got Patrick Hurley talking about the Southport attack. He's the Labour MP for Southport. He's talking about not letting the Southport attack define the place. He's talking about the town centre, and he's talking about getting the Pride and Place money in. To which Starmer didn't answer that directly. He didn't say, "Yep, you're getting your Pride and Place money." He said there is money. Also, we're doing up the pier because the Southport pier closed down, which is sad. It's an old Victorian pier. It was quite cool. One of those shitty arcades at the end of it that you put. No, actually, I'm lying. Do you know what? Do you know what they had at the end of Southport Pier years ago? They used to have old penny machines, and you had to buy old penny. The big old pennies that were the size of miniature pizzas. You had to get pennies and you put them in. True story. So you get these pennies from 1888 with Queen Victoria on them, and you'd use them to play the games. It was really cool. All these antique games there. They've got a really good antiques place. If you like your antiques, if you like your thrift shop stuff, Southport, I couldn't recommend it more. And also, it's got this beautiful row of arcades of shops with this lovely veranda, which is something that they still have in Australian cities like Sydney and Melbourne, but they don't have them over here because it never rains. So you never have to stay, dry when going from one shop to the other. You go to a shopping centre, out of town shopping centre, you stay dry, don't you? It's free park and you get to stay dry. All the shops are together. And they wonder why, like town centres are fucking dying. Well, you took the verandas away, so you get wet going from one shop to the next. The parking is £17 an hour, and it's a fucking nightmare. One of the things that you've got to say about out of town shopping centres, these horrible little box things are centred around a car park. At least when you're shopping, you're not constantly stressing, looking at your watch or looking at the time, thinking, "Oh God, I hope I don't get a ticket. Hope I don't get a ticket. Hope I don't get a ticket." The absence of stress is a massive winner when it comes to getting customers through your fucking door. I tell you. It wasn't me that said this, but someone said people will take convenience over everything, over morality, over price. They will take, if you know that you can get that thing delivered to your door tomorrow, you don't have to go out. You'll get it. They don't care about the morality of it. Because, convenience comes first. And town centres are no longer convenient for people because they're a nightmare to get into. They're a nightmare to get out of. And for the people who are trying to keep their businesses alive, it's very, very difficult because it relies on footfall and fewer people are going to town centres because going to these out-of-town shopping centres because the rates are cheaper there. It's cheaper to set these boxes up. They're not prestige old buildings, grade 2 listed buildings that you have to look after. None of that shit. Just fucking build a box in the middle of a bit of wasteland. Hey, come to my box, buy some things. So then we had a question from Lewis Cocking about working people being asked to pay more for less, blah, blah, blah. And we had a question from Julie Minns, who is a Labour MP, who was talking about the illegal e-bikes and that gave Starmer the chance to talk about the new product safety regulations that are coming in to stop e-bikes and the batteries, these dodgy batteries that keep going on fire. Oh, by the way, the police powers that I mentioned earlier, I said about the NHS, it wasn't. It was actually for this new police powers coming in to stop people on e-bikes. Then we had Claire Yorks, I've written that badly, talking about Yates Station and if we're going to get any funding. And Starmer sort of said, yeah, if you want it, come and take it. Then we had Dr. Peter Princely, who's doctor, talking about the NHS, and that gave Starmer the opportunity to talk about reform privatising the NHS, which is definitely what they're going to do if they get into power, because that's what their funders want them to do. Then we had Vicky Slade, who is a Lib Dem, talking about planning permission. I didn't quite get what the area she was talking about, because it was a site of special scientific interest, an SSSI, and they had to pay more because of some arcane law from the 1950s. We had that. Then we had Rachel Hopkins from Labour talking about a new youth hub in her constituency, and Starmer then got to stand up and say, yeah, we're getting 70 of those. Then we had Greg Smith, who's a Tory, saying businesses can't afford new apprentices, to which Starmer said, well, we subsidise apprentices, so let me know, we'll sort that out. And some pass them the paperwork so they can get funding from central government, I guess. And then David Robertson, who's Labour, talked about health centre and reforms broken promises in their area. And then Starmer, this is in Staffordshire, and Starmer got then the opportunity to stand up and talk about Staffordshire Council, which is a reform council, 3 leaders in 3 months. Wow. And then we had David Simmons, who's a Tory, talking about Mount Vernon Hospital, to which Starmer went, I don't know what you're talking about, record investments. Obviously, right, so there you go. Wow. And then there's Amazon helping the high street diet. Yeah, because people take convenience over everything. And Amazon is convenient. No one can deny that. But also Amazon can build a big fuck-off warehouse on the edge of a city and pay fuck all. And don't even pay fucking tax. Whereas if you have a little shop, little bric-a-brac shop in a city centre, you're having to pay not just tax on everything, VAT and everything else, but you're also having to pay for extortionate business rates, which Amazon just sort of sidestep. But then you've also got problems with companies like Starbucks that set up their their chains all over the place and don't pay any tax. Just don't pay back into the system. The people who work for them have to pay tax. They don't. But yeah. So yeah, all in all, Kemi Badenoch, terrible, absolutely bloody terrible performance. Again, trying to push this narrative that the tabloids are pushing, because the same people, the puppet masters of the tabloids, are the same as the puppet masters of Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage and all that. It's all the same people. It's all the Project 2025, Heritage Foundation, all these motherfuckers. They're all the same. They're Cambridge Analytica. It's the people who own the big platforms, the big media platforms, whether they're traditional media like the Telegraph and the Sun or those scum newspapers, or whether it's social media. It's owned by a small clique of billionaires who don't want to pay tax, because it's not enough for them to win. Everyone else has to lose. I'm not being funny, but I'm budgeting 4 months into the future. I don't comment on anything past then. That's until that ends, we won't grow as a nation. I agree. I've spoken before about how the Victorians seem to think about the future a lot more than our current crop of politicians. But there you go. And Martin Howard says, where the fuck did the G come from? You'll have to ask my parents. They wouldn't tell me. And then Sid said the footballers involved aren't millionaires. They lost all their money in an investment scam. Okay, all right. But I mean, surely they've got people that they know who are millionaires who they used to play with. I mean, look, I've got no problem with them taking this to court because I do think they were scammed. But is this on the same? It's 11 people, isn't it? That's why they're called the V11 group, right? It's 11 people. I mean, this is nothing on the scale of the post office scandal, is it? Did any of them go to jail? I don't know. But it is shit. Your working class footballers who are just taken advantage of by the posh twittering fucking elite. Martin Harrow, 250th anniversary of British defeat. Why should we celebrate that? Exactly. I think Trump should come here and fucking grovel. Fat bastard. I'm not interested in the seaside, says Al. Okay. I love the seaside, that's it. Many peers have disappeared over time. Shanklin, Isle of Wight shows no signs of ever having one. The remains of Brighton's West Pier are very sad to look at. Yeah. But at least you've got the other pier. Is the other one called the East Pier? I don't know. The Epstein class. Yeah. International cabal of billionaires and paedophiles. Usually both. Okay, so I'm going to just be a bit cheeky, right? And we're going to see if we can just get one super chat in, because I love working for free, but you don't get any money for doing these things. So just give me a moment, because otherwise it won't come through. But if anyone feels like giving a cheeky super chat, right, it will really insta release the confetti, which is awesome. So we have Amazon warehouse 15 minutes away. Orders are shipped to Manchester, which is 40 minutes away before distribution. Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, yeah. I'm sorry. It's a bit shit, and it is a bit shit, to say the least. The way that these companies have just found a way in. I do think that we're going to see increasingly. We already are seeing increasingly in town centres more experience-based stuff. So you're seeing more bowling alleys setting up. You're seeing more bars, more restaurants, more cafes, things that you can't get delivered to your house necessarily. But also you've seen a lot of these fake bloody phone fix-it places that are just fronts for something else. And I think that needs to be clamped down on as well. But community cafes and things like that, community hubs being set up in the city centre. I'm all for that. That'd be great. Insta confetti, says Diz, very excited. Boycott Amazon, says Sid. Yeah, indeed. Bit of love coming to L from Diz. I know her. I recommended her last year. She finally popped on, says L. There's I do like to be beside the seaside, but it depends where I am. you know, if I'm in like Skegness or in Scarborough or in Clacton, I don't think I'm going to have, or Blackpool, Jesus, I don't think I'm going to have a very nice time. Whereas, you know, go up to Formby, that's lovely. That's on the seaside. You know, there's a beach there, Formby Beach, lovely. Crosby Beach, again, on the seaside. That's all right. Llandudno in North Wales, that's lovely. There you go, Martin. Thank you very much for the £2 super chat, and that has triggered the Insta Confetti. It's the Insta Confetti. It's a beautiful thing to see. Diddle-dum, boop, boop. But yes, it is. Yay, thanks, Martin. Says Diz. Yay. Oh, you leave Skeggy alone. Ha. No. Yes, actually, yes, I will. I will leave Skegness alone. Don't you worry, Gallifreyan event. I will leave it well alone. I'll give it a huge swerve, massive berth. I will just leave it be. Same with Hull and Grimsby. And Middlesbrough most of the time, unless I have to go there. Boba Fetty. Oh, I love that. Boba Fetty. Oh, we should do a Boba Fetty thing, I think. That'd be cool, wouldn't it? Boba Fetty. Joe, we could be really clever. And instead of it making it the Star Wars character, we could make it Boba, the bubble tea, because that's called Boba, isn't it? Thanks for the company. Thanks for the £2 super chat. Now you can have confetti too. There you go. Woo! Oh, so made £4 out of that. That was good. Obviously, a quid of that's going to go to the fucking powers that be at Google because they're not rich enough. But yeah, £3. That would buy me a coffee, won't it? Somewhere up north. Maybe not in London. So I'll be back later today, hopefully. Might not be. So listen, if you would be so kind as to hit the like button before you go, I'd be much obliged. But also, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And if you are subscribed, please hit the bell notification icon so you get a ping in your pocket next time I'm on. Might be doing a show tonight. Haven't organised anything yet. Cards on the table. Don't know. Normally we do the rabbit hole, but Rachel can't come on for another couple of weeks. So until she's feeling better, we're going to press on with other shit. And if you've got any suggestions, you can always write to me. GrahamDavidHughes.com is the website you need to go to with suggestions for the channel. I'm always open to suggestions. But just because you suggested something doesn't mean I have to do it. You do know that, right? But also, tomorrow I'll be back at 9 o'clock. And then I'm pissing off to London. So it's going to be quite a short show tomorrow. Short, sharp shock for me. The morning shows are only supposed to be half an hour long. Not 2 hours, half an hour. When I started doing them every day on my own, when Phil stopped doing them every other day, I was like, oh, God, how am I going to talk about stuff for 2 hours? Or for half an hour, sorry. And there I am. There I am, still rabbiting on. Many hours later. So, I might see you tonight, hopefully, all things being well. If not, I'll definitely see you tomorrow morning around 9 o'clock for Morning Brew. And until then, I just want to say thank you very much for watching. Oh my God, Kemi Badenoch is shit at this, isn't she? She's so shit at it. Thanks very much for watching. Take care of yourself. And until we see each other again, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.